Of course the elections will not be rigged. What does that mean? If Mr. Trump is suggesting that there is a conspiracy theory that is being propagated across the country, including in places like Texas, where typically it's not Democrats who are in charge of voting booths, that's ridiculous. That doesn't make any sense, and I don't think anybody would take that seriously.
That was President Obama at a Pentagon press briefing last Thursday before he went to Martha's Vineyard to play his 300th round of golf there since he's been president. And he thinks you're off playing golf mentally, because anyone who has any basic memory, anyone that pays attention to what's happened, not just here in the United States, but all over the world, knows that election fraud from the highest levels is commonplace, and that there are hundreds of documented instances in this country's history. Now, that's just establishment election fraud. Voter fraud goes on by the millions every 2 years. That's been confirmed. So Obama gets up there and says, election fraud, what's that? It's like when Hillary was before the Senate committee and they said, what about the Turkish ambassador in Benghazi? She goes, turkeys, thinking the public wouldn't know about the country of Turkey. Instead, would have thought of a ground foraging bird that we eat on Thanksgiving. Now, here at InfoWars, we're going to be chronicling every single day in the next 90 days till the election what's really happening. And we're going to break down the facts of what's unfolding. But before I get into who actually counts the votes here, because Obama slipped up when he said, oh, if Trump's 15 points ahead in polls, but then doesn't win, then I'll be suspicious. He knows good and damn well that the polls themselves are fixed. And I'm going to get to that in a moment. But first, I want to look at what he said in the transcript of his speech. Now, there are 5 lies just in these 4 paragraphs, but I'm just going to focus on 2 for the sake of brevity. This is from the transcript of what President Obama said. If Mr. Trump is suggesting that there's a conspiracy theory that is propagated across the country, including in places like Texas, where typically it is not Democrats who are in charge of voting booths, that's ridiculous. That doesn't make sense. We're talking about a national election. We're talking about theft of battleground states like Ohio and Florida that are continually being stolen by both sides. We're not talking about places like Oregon or places like Texas. Oregon going for Democrats, Texas going for Republicans historically. But see, he builds a straw man. Oh, we hear this conspiracy theory out of Texas. That's how they always refer to us, the Texan, or the Texas conspiracy theory. Oh, we know Trump's listening to that guy. What? You think we're going to steal Texas? Why, Republicans run Texas. How preposterous. So he builds a straw man. Then he goes on, and this is the key, to say if Mr. Trump is up 10 or 15 points on election day and he ends up losing, then maybe he can raise some questions, Obama said. That doesn't seem to be the case at the moment. Obama has really stepped in it. Thanks to Trump coming out and exposing the fact that they tried to rig the primaries against him and did steal the primary from Bernie Sanders, Obama has been forced to come out and respond to this. And in doing so, he screwed up. Did you catch it? He said, oh, don't worry, Hillary's ahead in the polls. And look, we're going to go off those polls come election day. What he didn't tell you was twofold. He didn't tell you that Reuters and AP are part of the super secret private consortium that announces who the winner is nationwide. It's been a controversy every election for decades. We're going to get to that in a moment. And he didn't tell you that they've changed the methodology since Trump got way ahead in the polls to sample 10 to 15% more Democrats in a poll than Republicans, putting Hillary 10 to 15 points ahead fraudulently in what a lot of top pollsters have called criminal fraud, absolute malfeasance. So let's look at some of those poll numbers. Here's an example from Reuters' own website, where they conducted polls July 16th to July 20th with the new methodology they are still continuing with. 650 Democrats versus 496 Republicans. Then they've been caught also skewing so-called independents, 196, mainly picking, quote, Democrats and progressives. Then they're able to give you the number of Hillary Clinton 7 to 10 points ahead, and they're continuing to use this methodology, something they've never done before. But despite that, if you fast forward to now, in early August, Zero Hedge breaks down and links directly to Reuters, where suddenly her 10-point lead has shrunk to 3 points or has evaporated in some of their other polls. Despite the fraudulent methodology of adding 10 to 15 percentage points to Hillary by sampling, knowing Democrats are going to go for her, she still has 0 to 3% lead. That gives Trump a 10 to 12% lead. And don't forget, there's a lot of closeted voters out there that are just populists who want change. A lot of Sanders voters that know they were robbed, who are scared to say they're voting for Trump, but are planning to vote for Trump. Now let's look at the most important information yet. Breitbart is reporting on numbers that anybody can compile for themselves that Gateway Pundit put together. These are public numbers. These are crowdsourcing. And whether it's Facebook, whether it's Twitter, you name it, Trump has 3, 4, 5 times the positive reviews and the support that Hillary does. And that's what we see on the streets of America. We can't find Hillary signs or Hillary stickers. We did exit polls ourselves in California, and 8 out of 10 people were supporting Sanders over Hillary. But see, don't forget, AP, and we're getting to that right now, met the day before with the superdelegates at a rich donor's house with Hillary, and the superdelegates said, we're going for Hillary regardless. So that's when AP admits they, quote, called it for Hillary. And then AP itself, part of the secretive organization, then the next day announced the winners at about 8 o'clock at night. And they did it arrogantly, right out in plain view. Why? Because the bigger the fraud, the more you have to act like what you're doing is completely normal. Now, it's very important to note, I have interviewed the late, great Collier brothers. I have interviewed Bev Harris, who made the documentary Hacking Democracy for HBO. I have interviewed hundreds of experts, mathematicians, statisticians, Diebold chief engineers that have testified to legislatures and Congress that they were ordered to engage in fraud. And this is bipartisan. So when Obama denies all this is going on, this is admitted fact. You know about black box voting fraud. Everybody's seen it in the news. Again, it's like he's denying something that everybody knows exists. But what the public's not aware of is how they do it. Now, they can steal the election at the local area with hacking. They can stuff the ballot boxes, and that certainly goes on. But the way it's really done is in close battleground states, you simply have the news announce hours before the polls close that someone else is projected to win, and that other people don't go and cast their ballots, or everyone just kind of gives up and believes that person is really the winner. But no one ever asks who actually tallies the votes at the national level. Shortly after JFK's death in 1963, the Associated Press officially, but very quietly, took over the tabulation nationally of who the supposed winners of the elections were. Election after election, Voter News Service's numbers didn't match up with the real exit polls and recounts. They got caught in so many national computer glitches that they were forced to disband the organization after the 2002 election. But one day later, a new corporation was formed with the exact same 6 companies at the head. And that, of course, was National Election Pool. National Election Pool is made up, again, of the very same mainstream media that runs the fraudulent polls and then ensures that those fraudulent poll numbers are regurgitated on election night. And they're so arrogant, they're so brazen now, that they actually met before multiple primaries, like the California primary, and decided that Bernie Sanders would not get the popular vote, even though the popular vote did go to him in New Hampshire, California, and 9 other states. What you've seen here is a snapshot of the ocean of proof of election fraud. Many people have died trying to bring this information out. The Collier brothers went through living hell. Their daughter fights on valiantly today. So does Bev Harris. I want to challenge all of you to go out and do your own basic research on this and then ask yourself, what on earth is Obama doing when he makes a joke out of this? He's doing the same thing that the spokesperson for the State Department did last Thursday when they brought up how they're supposed to be transparent and open. He made a big joke, and so did the media, and they laughed at the American people.
Welcome to the State Department. I think we have some interns in the back. Welcome. Good to see you in this exercise in transparency and democracy.
That's just like Gibbs, the former press secretary. For years after the drone program was public, he was told to go on TV and say it didn't exist.
The New York Times reports that Vice President Biden, in these sessions talking about the way forward, has pressed specifically for a strategy that elevates the use of unmanned aerial vehicles, drones, and de-emphasizes U.S. combat forces on the ground. Can you tell us if that's true?
Major, I think you can understand why. I'm not going to get into internal discussions.
You can't say one way or the other if that's true or not.
I'm not going to get into it.
The drone program exists. The government lying to us exists. Election fraud exists. And we've seen them pull out the stops with fake polls, Google delisting Trump. We have seen Hillary's own emails sending protesters to act like Bernie Sanders people to attack Trump folks. So these two sides that should work together instead would be involved in a civil war. We've seen dirty trick after dirty trick. And the good news is the American people and the people of the world aren't buying the fraud anymore. It was just 8 days ago that I put out an emergency message to Donald Trump concerning the evidence of election fraud. And you know what? Trump responded within 48 hours, and it became a national issue and a national debate, and Obama was forced to respond. Now, if Trump and others point out that we have this national election pool running the show, they may be forced to back off. You see, Trump isn't a puppet like a Mitt Romney or a John McCain. He's not going to sit there and let them steal this from the American people. And now it's up to the American people to do our job and help Mr. Trump and help Bernie Sanders supporters as well ensure that free and open elections continue on in this country. They may have stolen it from Sanders at the nomination level, but they're not going to steal this national election without an information warfare fight. Thousands of years ago, there was a basic form of chivalry. Our ancestors would hear the drums of war, giving the warriors of the tribe a chance to organize and prepare a defense. 60 years ago, when foreign air forces were approaching filled with bombs, they had drums of their own, air raid sirens. But in the 21st century, there are silent weapons for quiet war. Pathogens added to the food and water and to the lining of plastics that destroy our vitality, turn off our hormones, and accelerate our journey towards death. I personally counter this onslaught with Anthroplex. Anthroplex is designed with known organic concentrated herbs to create the basic foundation to normal metabolic activity inside the human body. Discover why Anthroplex is turning so many heads today. It's time for us to take our bodies back into our own hands, and it starts at InfoWarsLife.com with Anthroplex.